Next up, we get back on the League Cup treadmill where, much to David Sullivan's apparent annoyance, we visit Goodison Park for a League Cup fourth round tie against Everton. Kick-off on Wednesday is 7:45pm. It's not been picked for TV, so some form of stream will be the order of the day, perhaps in conjunction with the lack of brains trust that makes up the duty personnel on that Eyes Up Mother Brown thing on YouTube, if you like. As is the norm at the moment, should the scores be level after 90 minutes, the tie will be settled by kicks from the penalty mark, with no extra time being played. The Toffee men have had what one could reasonably describe as a decent start to the season. In the league, they've had a 100% start, with away wins at Spurs, 1-0, and Palace, 2-1, which sandwiched last week's 5-2 beating of West Brom, a match that saw Slaven Bilic pick up an £8,000 fine for failing to genuflect before the self-appointed god that is Mike Dean. Those three results saw them spend Saturday night at the top of the table, before Leicester's win at Manchester City saw them drop to second. In this particular competition, they prevailed by beating Salford City 3-0 at home, and then getting rid of Fleetwood Town 5-2, in what was probably a nice cheap away trip for them, since that seems to be important these days. The latter win came despite an uncertain performance from custodian Jordan Pickford. Whilst not quite in the Roberto class, Pickford has had his moments in the past 12 months or so, to the extent that it came as a bit of a surprise when Nick Pope wasn't actually selected for England during the last round of internationals. Pickford got caught in possession on his own goal line, leading to a Fleetwood goal in midweek. Notable as that was in itself, it raised an eyebrow here at the Avram Grant Olympic Rest Home for the Bewildered, more for the fact that Pickford played at all, as it's the norm these days for the second choice onion bag minder to be given a run out in the League Cup. Although young Portuguese keeper Virginia played in the Salford match, Pickford was recalled for the visit to the confusingly named Highbury Stadium in midweek. Daisy, the socially bubbled personal assistant with a beautiful smile, informs me that they brought in 4 new players during the current window. 19-year-old left-back Niels Nkunku arrived on a free from Marseille, for whom he hadn't yet made a league start. He arrived having turned down a 3-year contract on the Riviera on the grounds that he was unconvinced that the club's sporting plan for the future would enhance his personal development, hence his move to Merseyside, which no doubt will enhance the player's personal bank balance. Both of his first 11 appearances have come in the League Cup, so we may well see him on Wednesday. They spent a few more quid on Brazilian midfielder Allan, 27.1 million to be exact. That money reunited Allan with boss Ancelotti, the pair having worked together at Napoli, who are the recipients of said cash. Allan holds dual Brazilian-Portuguese nationality and actually had the potential through a distant relative to also play for Italy, who apparently made discreet inquiries as to whether or not the player was partial to pasta. The player's appearance for Brazil in the Copa America put paid to that particular avenue of international football once and for all. The third arrival was another freebie in the form of James Rodriguez. The player, who we are informed we must refer to as James, lest we attract the attention of the Office of Football Pronunciation's Compliance Squad, appears to have settled in quite quickly at Goodison, netting his maiden goal in English football in the defeat of the Baggies last weekend. Clearly, Himmy, as I guess we're not allowed to call him, was not in vogue at the Bernabeu. He spent 17-18 and 18-19 on loan at Bayern Munich, assisting with their customary Bundesliga wins on each occasion. However, Bayern declined the option they had to make the deal permanent for €42 million, and the player returned to Madrid, featuring only 8 times as they won yet another La Liga. A departure at the end of his contract was therefore inevitable, though few would have had Everton high on their list of potential destinations for the player. The final arrival came from Watford, whose post-relegation carcass was raided for Abdoulaye Doucouré. One of the better players in the Hornets squad, the likelihood of him hanging around in Hertfordshire was always going to be remote, the player not having been over-vocal about how happy he might be going to visit Barnsley and Rotherham over the coming months. The £20 million paid will have no doubt been gratefully received at Vicarage Road by Mr Duxbury. Well, let's move on to the wild and wacky world of association football. And the bonkers story of the week has to be the tale of the Oxford United coach. That's coach as in team conveyance rather than in the football sense. The bus has a device requiring the driver to blow into an onboard breathalyzer before starting the engine. The theory is that in the event of anybody being moronic enough to endanger public safety while driving over the limit, the gadget will shut down the engine and prevent it from being driven for 6 hours. Now, as a self-respecting professional, the driver obviously hadn't touched the drop. However, it seems that someone had been a bit overzealous with the sanitizer spray, covering the gadget in alcohol-based gunge. No sooner had the driver switched the thing on than all the bells and alarms went off, stranding everybody and requiring the hasty requisitioning of a fleet of taxis to get them from Manchester up to Accrington. Still, the day got better. They turned over Stanley 4-1. Funniest game of the week, I think, was Newcastle picking up a point with a dodgy VAR penalty. Not something that one would normally condone. However, given that Spurs were the victims, and given that the Magpies hadn't laid a glove on them in the previous 90 minutes, the net result was absolutely hilarious. As with Little Nell's death, one would have had to had a heart of stone not to watch it without laughing. And so to us. Good, wasn't it? It looks for all the world as if Mr. Moyes may have hit on a system that works and suits the players available. Wolves were clinically dismantled by a side unrecognisable from the Newcastle game. Strong performances all over the pitch, although if I had to pick a standout it would have to be Antonio, who was quite simply unplayable. Cody will be having nightmares for ages, having been bullied out of the game. I hesitate to recommend Antonio for another shot at international recognition. I spend most England matches holding my breath every time someone kicks Declan Rice as it is. But what I would say is that on that sort of form he's a much better player now than when he was called up before a few years back. Just saying. The only fly in the ointment from what was a fine and superb 90 minutes was possibly the injury to Fredericks, who looks a lot better under the new system. That looked like a hamstring to me, which will probably mean a few weeks. I'm not entirely sure he would have been in the frame for the selection for the League Cup squad, but it's still an unwelcome blip on an otherwise splendid weekend. Fredericks joins Diop and Cullen on the absent list, the latter two having another 7 days of COVID isolation to get through, as has David Moyes, whose absence will at least save the owners the cost of one air ticket. Yet again I find myself having to juggle predictions. My guess is that we'll go with a similar side as we have done in the League Cup up to now, primarily to protect those performing so well in the Premier League. This would mean the likes of Yarmolenko and Haller getting starts with a few youngsters in the mix. This contrasts with Everton, for whom Pickford, Dean, Keane, Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin all started at Fleetwood. Realistically, I think this might just be a game too far for the Cup squad. I'd like to think that we could push it to penalties, but I think we may have to settle for an end to the Cup run on this occasion. I shall therefore bother Mr. Winston's employees and put the £2.50 I was going to send Mr. Sullivan so he can buy one of those scratch cards the airlines try and sell you on a good performance leading to an honourable defeat by 2-1. Enjoy the game.